Hello there, I'm Leo Waldock for Kit Guru, and this is the Phanteks Enthoo Mini XL, which looks, if you're familiar with the Enthoo Primo or the Lux, relatively familiar. It's quite a large mid-tower case, it's very smart, there are lots of clever tricks going on inside, but basically apart from this kind of slightly stepped thing here and the control buttons on the top of the case, it's just a case. What's the big deal? It's a variation on the theme. Oh, no, it's not. The name Mini XL, which is clearly bonkers. Mini is small, XL is large. What are they talking about? Imagine asking for a Mini XL at your favourite chicken joint. They'd be confused. The logic is this. If you take the Enthoo Primo, which is their big, grand, top-end beast, this is a slightly smaller version of that. That's what they tell us, therefore it's the Mini XL. Well, in actual fact, there's more to this because this case supports a micro ATX motherboard, not an ATX motherboard. Again, what are they talking about? How can a case this large take a small motherboard? And the explanation is, in addition to a micro ATX motherboard, you can also install a mini ITX motherboard. Two motherboards, two power supplies, two graphics cards. You can have two systems simultaneously running inside this one chassis. And that, to the best of my knowledge, is unique. If you know different, do let us know. Post a comment, mail us and tell us what idiots we are. See how you feel about this. But two systems in one chassis, I've not heard of this. I've certainly not seen it before anyway. So I'm sticking to that. There are a lot of bits on this table. Let me rattle briefly through them. The accessory pack that comes with the case, that's part of the price. The price is a penny under £150. You get 3 bits of hardware for knitting your own liquid cooling system, reservoir, pump and radiator. The radiator bracket doubles up and can also support 2 fans. Put that to one side. You also get a very neat box of fasteners, and I've also got some accessories which are optional extras. We've got 2 lighting kits. We've seen this before with the Lux. The 1 meter is 14 quid and the 2 meter is 17 pounds. From my previous experience with the lighting kit, a 1 meter basically does a lap of the case, and a 2 meter you end up with surplus and go all around the houses. It's quite flexible, but not super flexible. You can do quite a lot with 2 meters. 1 meter is going to be very likely the sweet spot. And I've also got this hard drive bracket. There are many drive bays inside this chassis. However, to get the most from the chassis, you're probably going to remove a great many of those bays. So this bit of tinware could actually become necessary. It goes in the optical drive compartment. That bracket, £5.99, £6. And then we have the Mini Itx Conversion Kit, which is this hardware here. This is just under £23 and consists of a front panel I/O gizmo, which gives you USB 3 headset jacks, power and reset buttons, because of course you need to control your second motherboard. That Mini ITX motherboard tray and this I/O panel, which gives you your second input-output and a couple of expansion slots. And looked at like that, it's completely mad, but we'll come to all this in time. So let's put all that. Oh, and you get some fasteners. And thankfully some instructions. And whoever has commented on these videos in the past say, who needs a manual with this fella? Oh, you need a manual. Right, so the case 150, Mini ITX Conversion Kit £23, that hard drive bracket 6, and some lighting is 14, that's 20 rather. Basically it's just under £200, which takes us straight, I think, from memory up to Primo territory. So, but of course they're not really competing. This is 2 systems in one rather than one big system in one. It's a steel chassis with this front panel with a load of aluminium sort of cladding on it. It's very smart in appearance. They've used a sort of sandblasted finish, which is just gorgeous to behold. I'm getting the best view in the house looking at this. The photos, I hope, show the detail, but really it's just one of those touchy-feely, oh, I like it kind of jobs. Very nice indeed. Inside the chassis there are some features we have seen on previous Phanteks cases. Let me just pop off the 2 side panels. 2 thumb screws for the back panel, not captive, pull the panel or lift it away, what you'll notice is there's a magnetic dust filter there over that ventilation. Here we have more ventilation. You can mount 2 fans to that panel. Inside you can see it's blanked off. By default, therefore, there's no noise, no airflow through it, but you can, if you choose, add 2 fans. Turn this around and hopefully we can do away with those nasty reflections from the windows. There's one thumb screw. There's another. Lift the panel away. And so we've seen this sort of a windowed affair before, the sort of split windows, main window, little sub window, and that small window shows off the Phanteks logo. If you're particularly cute with your manufacturing at home, in your shed, you can make your own little logo plate there and swap that for your own. Why not name the case after yourself? Okay, so on the back of the motherboards tray, it's this curious stepped affair because the ATX power supply goes in here behind what can form the mini ITX motherboard tray. So what that means is the power supply is actually at the top of the case rather than the bottom, and as Phanteks describes it, it is thermally separated from the main compartment. True. On the other hand, you could argue, if you go back to the Pro, which is their mid-tower 80 quid design, if you have the power supply at the bottom in what's become the conventional position where it slides in from the rear, and you have a power supply cover, again, the power supply is thermally separated, so you pay your money, you take your choice. However, here it's at the top, which is where power supplies always used to be, except it's upright and stuck out to one side. You'll see here we have a single 140mm fan in the middle of the rear of the case, which again, that's weird. You have a mount for a second fan, and I'm now going to turn to the manual and give you some numbers, which are sort of a bit You can, if you choose, put in a total of 8 140mm fans, 2 at the top, 2 at the bottom, 2 at the front, 2 at the rear, or a total of 14, count them, 14 120mm fans, 3 at the top, 3 at the bottom, 2 at the front, 2 at the rear, 2 on the hard drive cages and 2 on that radiator bracket. But that's nonsense because you won't have all those options available to you to be pulling bits in and out, and certainly if you go for the dual motherboard layout, you cannot begin to put all those fans in because you've got small things like liquid coolers in the way, and also graphics cards and power supplies and God knows what else. So theoretically 8 140mm fans or 14 120mm fans, not really. Okay, round at the front we've got 3 optical drive bays. Here they're tool free, you slide it in, it goes click, it's lovely. Again, however, if you think back to previous Phanteks reviews that we've done, all the hardware can be removed, everything is screwed together, so you can take out the optical drives if you choose, and then in fact you can in turn reach for the right bit of hardware. You can in turn put this hard drive bay in the optical drive bay area. Why, you might ask, would you wish to do that when clearly around here we have, look at them, 6 3.5-inch hard drive bays and also 2 drop and lock SSD bays, and on here, you may have noticed I was spinning this around, 2 more mounts for SSDs or hard drives. So that's 6 3.5-inch drives and up to 4 SSDs or 2.5-inch drives, heaps of hard drives. Who needs another bracket? Well, you're likely to be removing some of this hardware. So if we undo some thumb screws, whoops, one of those went missing there. As it happens when they ship this case to me, you may sometimes wonder, certainly I do, whether the hardware that's sent to us for review is sort of a reviewer's special. As it happens, this case arrived with an extra thumb screw lying in the bottom, which suggested to me it wasn't particularly special. I guess it just came off the production line. And also some of the drive caddies are actually on the skew, which again suggested no particular love for Leo. Which actually is fine by me because it suggests that what I'm seeing is what you're going to get as well. And then 2 more thumb screws. The thumb screws pile up and out comes that caddy there. So 2 caddies, each with 3 drive mounts. You can actually put a 2.5 if you screw it, or a 3.5 if you use the tool-free side mounts. My experience with these has been very good. As I say, it's slightly funny to see they came from the factory with two of them not in the correct location, but that's easy enough to sort out. The only thing I would say about the layout of the drive bays here is with, I think it was the Fractal Design Define R5, they split the drives. It was a total of 8 and they split it 5 and 3. Having seen that, I quite liked it. Perhaps in future we could see, instead of 6 split 3 and 3, if they split it say 4 and 2, you'd have the option of moving them around, so you don't have to ditch necessarily all the drive bays if you wanted to have, you know, a mini tower just at the bottom that held 1 or 2 drives. Just a thought, certainly not a problem. On the back of the motherboard tray, as I said, so we've got a huge cutout to get to the back of the micro ATX board. We've got a PWM hub there that can handle up to 6 fans. We've got SATA power connector, one there and one there. One of them controls the PWM hub if it's required. It might be powered from the motherboard. The other is to do with the Phanteks lighting switch on the top, which we'll see when we have a built PC to play with. So that's why there are 2 SATA connectors there. And then you've got cable management. We've got grommets. We can feed cables through easy peasy. We've got a bunch of these little tie-down loops for using cable ties. We've also got some of these hook and loop Velcro straps. The accessory pack. I've lost track. There's so many bits of this case. I'm sure I've seen. Oh, here it is. I'm using a bookmark. There's another hook and loop strap there, and they do give us some cable ties. So that's all good. Now the fans, so that was 8 140s or 14 120s allegedly. Alternatively, in terms of radiators, basically the options are just legion. The big things, however, are at the top 240 or 280 or 360. At the front 140, 120 or 240. And side, not so sure about that theoretically, but rear, they're saying you can put in 120, 240, 140 or 280. Once you've got 2 motherboards with all the I/O panels and so on, I don't really see that. It gets really tight for space at the back, but there's a lot of hardware at the back. And then the bottom 120, 140, 240, 280 or 360. Yes, there's a lot of space down the bottom. It does also depend on what you're installing. But, oh looky here, we've got a bunch of hardware in the way. It's all removable. Phanteks has screwed the entire case together, so the panels basically come away quite easily. Then I pull on the... Oh, hang on, before I do that, let's just show you the filters. Let's not get too carried away. Yep, so pop, remove, washable front filter, and then underneath, I heard the click, it didn't pop out, because I can't see what I'm doing. There we go. And another. And another. That could have been embarrassing, couldn't it? Right, and stand it back up again. So there we have it. So filters for the bottom, filter for the front, very good. And you can see there the mesh at the front, air flows through there. Very nicely done. And if I now pull the front panel, oh, that's that thumb screw that I dropped earlier, rolling around inside. And take away the front panel. There's a block connector there you need to break to remove the front cleanly. The front panel itself, lovely bit of work. Now, this is a heavy case and it does feel like a chunk of the weight is in that front panel. I weighed this case myself because I don't have a spec from Phanteks at the moment. I weighed it with the secondary motherboard mounts in place, which is only a bit of bracketry. 13.2 kilos. Now I would generally say that a relatively light case was down around the 7 or 8 kilo mark. A heavy case is 10 kilos possibly. 13 is a heavy case. And it has to be down to the sort of bits of design where they've given you this dual motherboard option. I can't think what else can possibly be an explanation for that. Anyway, that shows you the 2 stock fans at the front, 1 thumb screw at the top. There we go, and then we pull and the top panel comes away. And as you can see, plenty of options for mounting in the roof there if you want to get into modding this case. So now we've got off the side panels, we've got full access to the top. You can see the mounts there. Basically, it's a big open box. At this stage in the game, it's the dual motherboard design that is the key interest. So let's get busy with upgrading this case. building this PC has been a labour. I'd like to say a labour of love, but it'd be more accurate to say a labour. But of course, it's two PCs in one. So apart from the fact it's a unique experience for me, there's also twice as much to do. What we have at the moment is the system is running. The monitor over here is just so I can see what on earth's going on. This mouse is just so I can control it and shut it down and such like. We've got essentially a main system, which is the Micro ATX board at the bottom, and we have the Mini Itx at the top. Just to give a quick rundown of the hardware, and I'm reading various boxes scattered around here. The Micro ATX system is an ASRock FM2A85X, or put another way, AMD integrated. And I've got on there the Corsair H100i liquid cooler. And at the top, I've got, looking down to another box over here, you wouldn't believe how many bits and pieces there are. And a Zeus Z87i Pro, which is Mini ITX, Intel LGA 1150. The cooler on top of the Zeus with its Core i7 processor is this Noctua NHD9L, which I was sent quite recently. It's one of their standard sort of tower coolers, however it uses a 92mm fan rather than the 120. I'm only spelling that out because if you're thinking 120mm fan, it's not, it's a lot smaller than that and more compact, which is handy because it just fits inside the case. And this business of things fitting and so on, oh goodness, I've been around the houses with this. Here's the thing. This is a big tower case, but it is a Micro ATX. The Mini ITX is sort of the optional extra. You put the Micro ATX system in, leaving a bunch of space at the top, and the power supply, as I showed you before, goes around the back here. Because it's running, turning it and so on around is a bit awkward, but the photos will show all of this. The SFX power supply you can see down the bottom here is actually powering this board here, but that's a bit sort of back to front in a way, because it feels like the ATX power supply that's at the top and around the back and out of sight should be powering the bigger board. But in actual fact, I've got this power supply powering this board, this power supply powering this board, which is logical because they're closer, but it means the physically smaller power supply is powering the physically larger motherboard, and vice versa. Now the thing is, Mini ITX only ever supports one graphics card, as we know. Micro ATX will usually support two graphics cards if you want to. That's a bit of an unusual thing to do, but it is possible. So the likelihood is, if you're going to run SLI or Crossfire, you're likely to do it on this board down the bottom. That's why I've gone for this slightly unusual setup. I'm going for the integrated AMD setup down bottom and the more powerful setup up top. However, as you can see, the longer graphics card is down the bottom and the shorter graphics card up the top. That's a physical limitation. I've removed, as you can see, the drive plate, the drive caddies, the base for the whole thing. Also, when you switch out the Mini ITX back panel, which you saw before, and it's also in the photos, the fan that comes as standard goes out the window. The standard 140mm fan goes away with the plate. You don't get a fan on the replacement Mini ITX panel. If you do wish to install a fan, it's only a 120, so you'd need to provide one of those. That would obviously go here. That is doable, it just seems unnecessary to me. At the front, I've got the, as I mentioned, the Corsair H100i liquid cooler, which is a 240mm radiator and therefore a pair of 120mm fans at the front. That's all fine and dandy. Of course, that replaces the stock pair of 140mm fans. That works, but it's a little awkward getting everything in, and that was the neatest way of doing it. Now, you may recall when I started this off, there's a page in the manual that refers to how many fans and how many radiators you can put in this case. It's going to look back to, here we go. The main location for radiators, 360 in particular, is down the bottom. Now here's the thing, if you have all this hardware down the bottom, including an SFX power supply, you're not going to get a 360 radiator in there. It's just not going to happen. This is one of those, in theory you can, but in practice, it remains to be seen. If you don't have the Mini ITX board up top and the SFX power supply down the bottom, if you're running your Micro ATX board off an ATX power supply, You've got plenty of space down the bottom, provided you remove all the hard drive bays. You can do it. But the actual permutations available when you strip out the hardware that becomes unnecessary and you bung in your motherboards and your power supplies, your options essentially are liquid cooler in the roof, and that depends on what you're doing up here. A small liquid cooler, no problem, but you're probably going to lose your optical drive bays. A large liquid cooler at the front, easy peasy. So you really have to decide exactly how you're going to play this one and proceed accordingly. You also run into some detail hassles. So obviously I've got the front drive I/O panel to power and control the Mini Itx board. But that has a very slight sort of step to the bezel, so it has to slide in. Once it's in place, you can't just pull the front panel off because the front panel won't clear it. It wants to pull this caddy back out, which if you then wish to install a liquid cooler here to gain access to the fans, you have to remove the front panel. So you need to do that before you put this in place. And there's an awful lot of kind of, I have to do this before I do that. The sequence of the jobs ends up being really precise. Also, if you look in here, what you can see is that this, as it happens, is Sapphire Mini ITX graphics card purely for compactness, but it's a dual slot design, so it's conventional. It's like their Tri-X card down here, only shorter. It actually slightly overhangs the Micro ATX board, and what that means is that you don't have the option of putting a large air cooler on the Micro ATX board down the bottom, because it'll clout your graphics card. I'm assuming all graphics cards these days are dual slot. There are obviously some single slot. You might be going for integrated graphics. As I say, there are a gazillion permutations. But as things stand, assuming you're using a dual slot card up here, it's going to overhang this board slightly and it will clout a large air cooler. So you're basically obliged to use a liquid cooler on the Micro ATX board down the bottom. Whether you use an air cooler or liquid cooler up the top, that remains to be seen. Believe you me, I've had some fun and games with this one. Anyway, I'm going to shut the PC down briefly and switch the hardware over, but I can keep this all running because this is the joys of... there we go, so that's now hopefully gone a little bit quieter, and I move the DVI connector, and I move the power cable to the other power supply. And I move my mouse and keyboard wireless dongles, and then I'm going to lean around the front because, and let's actually show you this, it really can be a bit hard to get your head around this. So here we have the power button for the what I would regard as the main system, but of course this is the panel that controls the Mini ITX system. Now, as it powers up, you will see this gorgeous lighting kit. Now this came as a complete surprise to me because I hadn't appreciated that it had built-in lighting. As I mentioned earlier when I mentioned the weight of this system, I didn't actually get a spec for the Enthoo. So when I turned it on, it came as a real surprise that you got this built-in lighting. Now there's a button on the top there. There we go. I'm just going to toggle through the options so you can see the colours. I won't bother reading out what I think they are because it should be clear. And if it's not, it's an abject failure. And then I'm going to sit down. There we go. And I'm going to turn the case slightly and I'm going to show you what you may have thought up to this point was kind of like a really tape measure. That's the 1 meter accessory LED kit. So I'll leave it on the table just coiled up and I'll go through the options again. And obviously the idea is it's self-adhesive. The idea is that you run it around the inside of the case. And let's go to what I consider to be a very agreeable colour and put that back inside. The lighting is a triumph. It's absolutely glorious, and the case as a piece of hardware is almost mind-boggling. The quality throughout is almost impeccable, although I am sporting a very slight wound where I managed to do myself some damage. You know, I don't even know which bit it was on. I was pulling so many bits in and out of this during this build. It's a good bit of hardware. However, I'm just going to shut the PC down so I can turn the other panel off, pull the other panel off. I'm not certain why they've given you the option of the Mini Itx conversion. And the reason I say that is, if you buy this case and you don't install the secondary motherboard, then what you have is a very large micro ATX case. Well, they've already got those in the Phanteks range. It's called the Primo or the Lux, or indeed the Pro. They cover every price point of any interest to us, and they give you a whole heap of features, including build your own liquid cooler, change the radiators around, change the drive bays around. You've got covered power supplies. They've given you a stack of options with the other three cases. So as far as I'm concerned, this Mini XL only makes any sense if you're doing the dual systems in one case idea. And if you're doing that, well, they might as well supply it with their correct I/O panel, and it would obviously be a very specialist interest case, but fair enough, there's no harm in that. Now I'm just going to pull off the back panel and swing. Whoa, that was nearly exciting. Put that over there and then swing it round so you can see the pair of Samsung SSDs that I've got in the drop and lock bays. Now the thing is, the cable management is just dreadful. They've given you all the hook and loop straps, they've given you the tie down points, you've got all the grommets and so on. Everything in that regard is good. It's as good as I'd expect from Phanteks. It's the fact you've got twice as much cabling to put away, and you've actually got decisions. Which power supply do I connect to which motherboard? Where do I run the cables? I'll swing it back round. I mean, this SFX power supply sitting here, it's just a dog's dinner. There's almost nothing you can do to make that look competent, because after all, you're going to get cabling coming out of here, and it's got to either go here or here. What are you going to do? And also, most small form factor power supplies, and indeed most small form factor hardware, things like cable runs, they're really limited. They don't give you extra because they want it to be neat and tidy. It's generally going in a really small case. Putting an SFX power supply in a really big case is an unusual thing to do. So the cables are limited. You have to basically plug it to here. You haven't got the option of running it all around the houses. So you're kind of stuck. And in a way that's inherent to the design. So I think Phanteks they found themselves hamstrung by the fact of giving you options, when realistically with this case you don't have many options. You have to put two boards in it, otherwise you've got the wrong case. If you're doing that, you are going to put the power supplies here and here. You get the choice of which motherboard and which processor you use in which location, that's fine. But this business about the fact you can allegedly put a 360mm liquid cooler in the top and a 360 in the bottom, I'm just reading the manual to make sure I'm not lying, and a 240 at the front and a 240 at the side. Well, you tell me, do you think this is possible? I just don't begin to see it. If you're building your own liquid cooling system to go in this chassis, I think you could have a whale of a time. However, you're going to be losing the optical drive bay almost certainly. You're going to be running on SSDs. Forget about storage drives. That's just impractical. You're obviously losing the hard drives. They could have basically gutted this case to start with, started with the dual motherboards and just worked from there. In which case, I think it would have been a much more straightforward message they were selling. Two motherboards, here you go. Make it look pretty-ish. You've got the option then of having your boring, dull PC for everyday duties and your thunderous gaming PC for when you want to play in one chassis. That's the message here. Why else do you want two systems in one chassis? And I can only think dull, boring PC and Thunder PC. The alternative that I would love to see, but I can't quite see it, how it would work, would be if you had a dual boot Windows and Mac OS X. That would be lovely. But as things stand, this is a really niche case that does some very clever things. However, it promises a lot more than it actually delivers, because realistically, you are severely limited in your options. If you only plan on using a single motherboard in this chassis, then I absolutely cannot begin to see how that might work. Many of the features are borrowed from the Primo, the Lux and the Pro, and quite right too. The pop-out air filters and such like I like, I'm sure I'll see more of those. Most of the rest of it is quite familiar. It's the motherboard trays that are different and the dual power supplies that are different. Oh, by the way, the lighting I absolutely adore. The lighting kit is just glorious, and it's better than the Lux system. It's just, yes please, let's have more of that. So, by goodness me, I've had to work with this case to understand what it's about and to use it. And I can only apologise for this because I'm sure there are people out there who are going to be just appalled by the state of this build. But really, I tried what was close to my best, and I only consider I failed. What can I say? But I wasn't helped by the layout of the case. So there we go. That's a bit of a sort of an up and a down and this and a that. In the main, I like this case. I would suggest that the target market for it is tiny. Absolutely niche. In fact, it's probably a market I didn't even know existed until last week. But there we go. That's the nature of the beast. Anyway, enjoy the photos and I hope you like this. This is Leo Waldock for Kit Guru.